What do you make of the New South Wales Opposition leader, Mark Speakman, announcing in the last couple of days he's back in The Voice?
Mark Speakman's a good person and a great opposition leader in New South Wales, and I support him, but I don't agree with him on this issue. I think he's got this one wrong.
Well, let me ask about this stoush in the Senate during the week involving the 60-day dispensing change, cheaper medicines, the government calls it. Why have you sided with pharmacists here? We pointed out on last week on air that pharmacists have given more than $600,000 to the Liberal and National parties over the last term of government. Does this have something to do with your stance?
Andrew, we're always on the side of consumers, and the misinformation that Labor is putting out about this suggests that we're not interested in cheaper medicines or 60-day dispensing, and nothing could be further from the truth. But it isn't about the pharmacists versus the government or the consumers, because actually pharmacists and consumers work together in every pharmacy across Australia to support vulnerable patients and their access to medicines. I've stood not just in my rural pharmacies, which open in small towns where, by the way, there is no doctor, so if you didn't have your pharmacist, you would be absolutely lost when it comes to healthcare. And I've stood in big city pharmacies, and I've seen how the pharmacists interact, care for and look after vulnerable patients. Not just people like you and me who may come in once a month or once every 2 months for our script, but people who need ongoing wraparound care, in aged care, in disability, who just have that connection and that conversation. And you can't get your medicines from a pharmacy if that pharmacy is closed. And that is what we are absolutely facing with this measure. And I say to people, when it comes to your health, do you trust Anthony Albanese or do you trust your local pharmacist? I think most Australians would go for their local pharmacist quite high up the list.
So nothing to do with political donations?
Absolutely not. Look at the policy, look at the actual effect of that policy, and look at what it does to vulnerable Australians. I go to towns, and I'm not going to name the towns or the aged care centres, where aged care is flat out getting both a doctor and a pharmacy to dispense their medicines. Now, those pharmacies that do that often do that for very little money. And the dispensing fee picks up these costs that you don't see that actually allow them to provide that care, hours and hours of care for vulnerable Australians that they know need that care. I spoke to a pharmacist in my electorate who came out on the weekend and literally went round to someone's house to deliver the medicines, knocked on the door, knows their patients, knows their families, knows their history. And if that pharmacy has to close or wind back its services, it's actually the patients, the vulnerable patients in particular, who will suffer. So what we've said to the government is we're not against going ahead and doing this. And by the way, neither are pharmacists. But let's do it properly. Let's sit down and work out a way that means that pharmacies will not close. All
right, nearly out of time. Just a couple of quick things I want to ask you about. The proposed visit by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to China. Do you back in Simon Birmingham saying he should not go until Cheng Lei is free?
We wish the Prime Minister well, and the comments that Simon Birmingham made underscore the real seriousness of the detention of Cheng Lei. And I know that everyone, but maybe particularly women, mothers, those who just appreciate how awful it is to be separated from your children, would have heard those words from her detention, and it really was quite heartbreaking. And I absolutely call on the Chinese Communist Party to release Cheng Lei. Secret trials, secret reasons, awful 3 years of detention, Andrew. It is just dreadful.
Should he go or not if she's not released?
Look, I'm sure he'll take all of these things into account. You know, I don't want to be telling the Prime Minister whether or not he should travel. I hope he takes them into account. It underscores the seriousness of the issue. It really does need to be elevated, and it is really, really important that it is addressed.